Hello everyone. In the present session, I will explain regarding RAID impact on disk performance. So in the previous video lecture, I already discussed regarding different RAID levels like RAID 0, nested RAID, RAID 1, RAID 3, RAID 4, 5 as well as 6. So consider 4 disks are used for data and one is used for parity. So here I'll use 4 disks in order to store the data, as well as I'll use one disk in order to store the parity value. So next I'll assume the parity P at the controller is calculated as parity EP is equal to E1 XOR with E2 XOR with E3 XOR with E4. So here D1 to D4 is strip data across the RAID group of 5 disks, and whenever the controller performs a write IO, parity must be computed by reading the old parity EP old and the old data E4 old from the disk, which means that 2 read IO operations. So now within the disk, suppose I have to update some informations here. So now here I have to perform 2 write operations as well as 2 read operations. That means initially I have to read the old data, as well as old parity value. Have to read old data as well as old parity value, and I'll be having the new data, that is E4 new, and I have to compute the new parity. So the equation to compute the new parity is EP new is equal to EP old minus E4 old plus E4 new. So that means, so have to compute whenever any updations comes or new write comes with respect to the disk. So have to compute the parity value once again. So I'll take this disk as disk E. So now I have to compute the new parity value EP new with respect to old data as well as old parity. That is EP old means old parity minus old data plus new data. So that is how I can compute the new parity with respect to the new data as well as old data and old parity values. So now here we can observe that we are having a single RAID controller, and suppose I'll take, so this is disk E, and I have to there is one modification with respect to E4. So strip E4 is updated here. So now what I need to do is, whenever new write comes, so I have to compute the new parity value. So that in order to compute the new parity, I need to read the old data as well as old parity value. How I can compute the new parity value? EP new is equal to EP old minus E4 old plus E4 new. So here in the diagram we can observe that I have to read 2 informations from the disk. So that is, I have to read old data as well as old parity. The RAID controller need to read old data as well as old parity. After reading old data and old parity, so it need to compute the new parity value by considering the equation EP old minus E4 old plus E4 new. So after computing the new parity, the rate controller need to write the information, that is it need to write or it need to update EP new as well as it need to update E4. So that means whenever any new write comes or any updations comes with respect to a given strip within the disk or drive, so at that instant here in the case of RAID 5, so the RAID controller will perform 2 read operations, as well as after computing the new parity it will perform 2 write operations. So the total penalty, that is write penalty with respect to RAID 5 is 4. So please note, I'll repeat, the write penalty in the case of RAID 5 is 4. After computing the new parity, the controller completes the write IO by writing the new data and the new parity onto the disk, amounting to write IO operations. So I have to consider 2 write operations here. Therefore, the controller performs 2 disk reads as well as 2 disk writes for every write operations. So controller performs 2 disk read as well as 2 disk write operations with respect to any new write operations, and the write penalty in the case of RAID 5 is 4. The total write penalty is 4. That means 2 read operation plus 2 write operations. Total it is 2. So in the case of RAID 6, since we have to maintain dual parity, so RAID 6 in the sense dual distributed parity, a disk write requires 3 read as well as 3 write operations. So that means 3 read in the sense it need to read EP1 volt, EP2 volt and E4 volt data. So I'll consider 2 parity as EP1 and EP2. I'll consider 2 parity as EP1 and EP2 as well as data as E4 volt, and I have to perform 3 read operations to read old parities, that is PP volt as well as E2 volt and the volt data. After calculating, after that I have to compute 2 new parities, that is EP1 new as well as EP2 new. The controller performs 3 write operations in order to write this parity as well as this parity followed by the new data. So total I have to consider 3 read and 3 write operations. Total 6 will get. So that means total 6 in the sense, so write penalty in the case of RAID 6 is 6. So therefore, in a RAID 6 implementation, the controller performs 6 IO operations for each write IO, and the write penalty is 6. So in the diagram, we can observe that different RAID levels are listed along with read penalty and write penalty. So here we can observe that for RAID 0, the read penalty is 1 and write penalty is also 1. For RAID 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, that means for nested RAID, read penalty is 1, write penalty is 2, because we have to update the mirror disk also. So next, in the case of RAID 3, penalty is 1, means read penalty is 1 and write penalty is 4. RAID 4, read penalty is 1, write penalty is 4. RAID 5, read penalty is 1, write penalty is 4. And RAID 6, read penalty is 1 and write penalty is 6. That means 3 read operation and 3 write operations with respect to RAID 6. 2 read as well as 2 write operations with respect to RAID 5, RAID 4 and RAID 3. So here 1 read and 1 write operation. 1 read and 1 write operation. So with that is with respect to RAID 1, RAID 01 and 10. So now we'll consider one problem. So application IOS, input output per second and RAID configurations. So consider an application that generates 5200 input output per second with 60% of them being reads. The disk load in RAID 5 is calculated as follows. So now here suppose if I am considering 60% of them are read, means the remaining 40% will be write operations. Remaining 40% will be write operations. So now I have to compute the RAID disk load with respect to RAID 5. Disk load with respect to RAID 5. So now here 60% of 5200 IOPS, 60% of 5200 IOPS are read operations. So remaining 40% is write operations. Whenever we are calculating the disk load, I'll directly take write penalty for disk RAID 5 as 4. So 2 read as well as 2 write operations. So how I can compute the disk load with respect to RAID 5? So that means 0.6, that is 60% of them are read into 5200 plus write penalty for RAID 5 is 4. That means 2 read and 2 write operations, followed by 40% of them are write operations. So now because the write penalty for RAID 5 is 4. So I'll get 0.6 into 5200, that is equal to 3120 plus 4 into 2080. So I'll get the total IOPS with respect to RAID 5 as 11,440 IOPS. So now similarly we have to compute the disk load for RAID 1. So in the case of RAID 1, what is the penalty? Write penalty is 2. So the same equation I can use. 60% of them are read and remaining 40% IOPS are write operations. So 0.6 into 5200 plus 2 into 0.4 into 5200. So because why we consider here 2, that is write penalty with respect to RAID 1 is 2. So we'll get 0.6 into 5200 as 3120 plus 2 into 2080. So you'll get total number of IOPS as 7280 IOPS. So that is with respect to RAID 1. So the computed disk load determines the number of disks required for the application. So in this example, an HDD with a specification of a maximum 180 IOPS for the application needs to be used. So the number of disks required to meet the workload for the RAID configuration would be as follows. So now they have mentioned the maximum number of IOPS for the application. So that is the maximum IOPS required for the given application is 180 IOPS. So now I have to compute the number of disks required with respect to RAID 5 as well as RAID 1. So the number of disks required with respect to RAID 5, that means we already computed the total number of IOPS with respect to RAID 5. So that is 11,440 divided by the maximum IOPS given for the application, that is 180. So we'll get 64 disks with respect to RAID 5. So similarly we can compute the number of disks required with respect to RAID 1 as the total number of IOPS computed was 7280 divided by the maximum IOPS that is 180 IOPS. So we'll get 42 discs as answer. So you can approximate to the nearest even number. Please remember, so we have to approximate to the nearest even number. So this is how we can compute the number of discs required whenever the IOPS is specified along with the maximum IOPS for the application is given in the problem. So next we'll take components of an intelligent storage system. So here we can observe that the basic components of an intelligent storage system are front end, cache, back end and the physical disk. So we are having four major components. Components are located within an intelligent storage system like front end, cache, back end and the physical disk. So here we can observe that we are having the front end and the IO request can be processed through the front end from the host. And host is connected to the front end using a storage network or any connectivity. An IO request received from the host at the front end port is processed through the cache. So the IO request can be arrived across the front end and those requests can be processed through the cache and the back end. So finally, so the data can be stored within the physical disk. So we can observe that the front end consisting of front end controller as well as front end ports, followed by the back end. So it is also consisting of controllers, front end consisting of front end controller, back end consisting of back end controller and back end ports as well as front end ports. So next we'll take front end. So the front end provides an interface between the storage system and the host. So what is the functionality of front end? Front end provides the interface between storage system and the host. So it consisting of two components like front end port and front end controller. So basically the front end consisting of front end ports as well as front end controller. So front end ports enable host to connect to an intelligent storage system. So the front end ports, through the front end ports, the host can plug into the intelligent storage system. Each front end port has processing logic that executes the appropriate transport protocol such as SCSI, fiber channel, iSCSI for storage connections. So the front end port has the processing logic. So processing logic in the sense the request will be arrived across the front end. So it need to process those commands or requests which were appeared from the host and those need to be executed. So for that we have to follow some set of protocols. So for that we are using appropriate transport protocol such as SCSI, fiber channel or internet SCSI for storage connections. So next we'll consider front end command queuing. So what is the meaning of command queuing? So command queuing is a technique implemented on the front end controller. So command queuing is a concept which is implemented on the front end controllers. So it determines the execution order of received commands. So that means the front end command queuing, so which will identify in which order those commands can be executed and can reduce unnecessary drive head movements. So it will reduce unnecessary drive head movements and improve disk performance. So the front end command queuing, so it identifies as well as determines the execution order of the received commands so that it can reduce or minimize unnecessary drive head movements and improve the disk performance. So when a command is received for execution, whenever the command is received for execution, the command queuing algorithms assigns a tag. So the command queuing algorithm will assign a tag, so that tag will define a sequence in which those commands can be executed. So what is the meaning of the tag? So the command queuing algorithm, which will assign a tag, so that tag will define a sequence or order in which the commands can be executed. With command queuing, multiple commands can be executed concurrently based on the organization of data on the disk, regardless of the order in which the commands were received. So with the command queuing algorithm, multiple commands can be executed concurrently. So continuously many number of commands can be executed on based on the organization of data on the disk, regardless of in which particular order those commands were received. So the order in which the commands were received, we are not considering the order in which the commands were received. Instead of that, the command queuing algorithm, which will assign a tag, so that will define the command execution sequence. So we are using two command queuing algorithms. The commonly used command queuing algorithms are first in first out, seek time optimization, and access time optimization. So in the case of first in first out, as the name specifies, so this is the default algorithm. This is a default algorithm where commands are executed in the order in which they are received. So in which particular sequence the commands were received, in the same sequence or in the same order those commands can be executed. There is no reordering of request for optimization. We are not reordering or resequencing the request or commands. So in whatever the format or whatever the sequence those commands were received at the front end, so in the same order those commands can be executed. So it is inefficient in terms of performance. So obviously, so first in first out is it's an inefficient algorithm with respect to performance. So next we'll consider seek time optimization. So commands are executed based on optimizing read or write head moments. So I have to optimize read as well as write head, which may result in reordering of commands. So I have to optimize read as well as write head. So if you are going for optimization, obviously this may result in reordering of commands. Without seek time optimization, the commands are executed in the order they are received. So if you are not considering the seek time optimization, the commands can be executed in the order they are received. So here I can consider we are having front-end controller. So I'll take first one is without optimization. So without optimization, so the commands appeared across, or IO request appeared across the front end is in the sequence A, B, C as well as D. So in the same sequence those commands can be executed. Suppose if you are considering seek time optimization, so here I need to execute C after A. I need to execute command C after A. So that means I need to execute the command. So initially I need to execute A. After that I need to execute C. After that I need to execute B. After that I need to execute D. So now I can consider I need to execute command C immediately after command A. immediately after command A. So now I have to modify the order. The new order is ACBD. So that is, in the cylinder format, I can observe that A, C, B, D. If the radial moment is less, comparatively I can execute C immediately after A, and after execution of command C, I can go for B as well as D. For example, as shown in the figure, the commands are executed in the order A, B, C and D. The radial movement required by the head to execute C immediately after A is less than what would be required to execute B. The radial movement required in order to execute C, which is less comparatively in order to execute command B. So that after A, I can execute C, after that I can execute B, finally the last command is D. So this is the new sequence A, C, B, D. By considering seek time optimization, that is radial moment of head, So read bar rate head structure. So that is why we can improve the performance in the if you are considering seek time optimization while executing the command. So next comes access time optimization. So in the case of access time optimization, the commands are executed based on the combination of seek time optimization and the rotational latency. While executing the commands, so we have to consider the combinational effect of seek time optimization as well as the rotational latency. So in order to get optimal performance, the command queuing can also be implemented on the disk controller, and they may further supplement the command queuing implemented on the front end controller. So command queuing can also be implemented on the disk controller also. And while implementing the command queuing concept, so we can either consider first in first out seek time optimization or else access time optimization concept. So next we'll take cache. So here cache is nothing but an important component that enhances the I/O performance in an intelligent storage system. So basically cache is located between the front end as well as back end. So the cache is semiconductor memory where data is placed temporarily in order to reduce the time required to service I/O requests from the host. So cache is nothing but semiconductor memory where we can store the data temporarily so that we can reduce the amount of time required in order to perform the I/O request. So those I/O requests will be always placed by the host. Cache improves storage system performance by isolating host from the mechanical delays. So if suppose the hosts are accessing the data directly from the storage system, obviously there may be a chance of additional mechanical delays, so which is associated with the physical disk, which are slowest, which are the very slowest components in an intelligent storage system. So because if you are accessing the information from the physical disk, since the size of the physical disk is large compared with the cache, obviously it takes a longer amount of time in order to access the information from the physical disk. So in order to overcome from that, we can make use of cache so that it will improve the storage system performance. Obviously it will improve the storage system performance. So next we'll take structure of cache. Cache is organized into pages or slots. So which is the smallest unit of cache allocation? Which is the smallest unit of cache allocation? The size of a cache page is configured according to the application. So we can vary the size of the cache page is according to the application requirement. So cache consisting of data store as well as diagram. Cache consisting of data store, two components like data store as well as diagram. So entries in the diagram indicates where data is found, in the cache and where the data belongs on the disk. So the diagram indicates where the data is found within the cache as well as where the data belongs on the disk. Diagram includes a special flag bit called as dirty bit, which will indicates whether the data in the cache has been committed to the disk or not. In order to identify whether the data in the cache has been committed to the disk or not, so we can consider or we can use a single flag bit, and that is called as dirty bit. It also contains additional informations like time-based information such as time of last access, which is used to identify cached information that has not been accessed for a longer period and may be freed up. So here the diagram also contains time-based informations. So for example, the time of last access, so which can be used in order to perform the flushing process. So that means whenever the cache is full or whenever the cache reaches to some level of cache utilization watermark level, so at that instant, so we have to copy some set of pages from the cache into the disk. So that process is called as flushing process. So the cache contains time-based information such as time of last access. So with respect to time of last access, we can decide whether to store such pages within the cache or not, or whether to delete the pages from the respective pages from the cache or not. So this is the structure of the cache. As I mentioned, so it consisting of few set of pages, data store, diagram, and we are having all the informations with respect to the disk or within the disk. So cache is a high-speed data storage layer which stores a subset of data, typically transient in nature, so that future requests for that data are served up faster than is possible by accessing the data from the primary storage location. So the size of the cache is comparatively small with respect to the storage or the physical disk, so that we can perform read as well as write operations very quickly. So next we'll take types of cache memory. Cache memory is fast as well as expensive. Traditionally, it is categorized as levels that describes its closeness and accessibility to the microprocessor. So there are three general cache levels. So first one is L1 cache and L2 cache. So L1 cache or primary cache is extremely fast but relatively small. So if the size is small, the capacity or memory storage capacity is small means obviously, so the operation or read or write operations we can perform very quickly, and is usually embedded in the processor chip as CPU cache. So next comes L2 cache or secondary cache. The primary cache is called as L1 cache. The secondary cache is called as L2 cache. Is often more called as L2 cache, and L2 cache may be embedded on the CPU or it can be on the separate chip also, and it has high speed alternative system bus connecting the cache and the CPU. So that way it doesn't get slowed by the traffic on the main system bus. So both a page and the cached line are contiguous and required to be aligned to their respective size. So a 64-byte cached line is always 64-byte aligned and a 2 MB page is always 2 MB aligned. So I can have the size from 8 byte to 64 byte. So minimum size is 8 to 64 byte with respect to the cache pages. The page size may be either 8 bytes or 64 bytes. So we can have the different types of cache memory as L1 cache as well as L2 cache.